Welcome to 30 Minutes, Lawrence, a program where through appreciative inquiry we seek to empower people on their paths of peace and justice. And with me today is my friend Tim Bullock. Tim Bullock has come from the Peace Pagoda in Leverett, and he's on a Walk for Peace, the 16th Walk for a New Spring. And each year there's a theme, and this year's theme is in support of safe communities and sanctuary in general. So Tim, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you for having me.
I want to say to start with, people may have seen you walking through the communities from Leverett. Yesterday you walked through Lawrence, from the Vietnamese temple to El Tayer downtown. And I wonder if you'd pull out your drum and share with us a little bit. The monks walk and they do a chant. Just so you can make it out, it's to say what it is that you're chanting.
We chant a phrase that's called Namu Myoho Renge Kyo.
And does that have a translation?
It doesn't have a literal translation,
Okay.
but we like to think of it as a way of connecting the Buddhahood within each of us to the Buddhahood that it dwells in everyone. It's a way of greeting that divine spirit.
Okay, so could you chant a little bit of Namu Myoho Renge Kyo the way that you would when you're walking in the street
I
and
certainly can.
spreading the word?
Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo.
Thank you so much. Can you turn your drum so that the camera can pick up on the lettering?
Yes.
Is that the chant itself?
This is the chant itself in kanji, or Japanese calligraphy, yes.
I don't know that we have to have an exact translation, because for I don't know for how many years I've been hanging out with you folks from the Peace Pagoda, but when you're at an event, at a peace event or social justice event, it always has a kind of centering, peaceful effect, and I think people respect your intentions, which you say strike something within.
Many people have commented that, it's almost like a heartbeat to hear that drum beating, and in many ways it does help to relax people. It relieves that stressful feeling that often accompanies being in big crowds or addressing these issues that we are often gathered for.
And even though it comes out of a particular Buddhist denomination, there's a universal appeal that I certainly experience. When did you get involved with the Peace Pagoda and the Nipponzan Myoji monks who build these incredible? Go out, please, folks, go out to Leverett at the earliest and witness this incredible structure.
I became involved in 1998. This particular order of Buddhism, their mission is to walk for peace around social issues and to build pagodas around the world. In 1998, they initiated a walk that addressed the transatlantic slave trade. It was a year-long walk that started in Massachusetts but ended up in Cape Town, South Africa. It was a walk that changed my life, and I decided that walking for peace was something, it was the way I wanted to contribute to the betterment of the world. And so I've been walking ever since.
Now, most monks, most nuns are cloistered. They don't go out into the world. How did this come to be that Buddhist monks and nuns are in the thick of things?
Good question. Our founder, Nichidatsu Fuji, who was given the name Guruji by Mahatma Gandhi, at the age of 60, on the day they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, he turned 60 years old, and he decided that this order need to be an activist order, not being cloistered or meditative, although we do meditate from time to time, but to go out and to work for peace. And so that's when the chanting and the drumming and the walking for issues began, I believe, back in 1945.
You're not exactly a political group, although you work with legislators, and in fact, last year's walk, Shared Security, was promoting the reality that a country cannot exist by itself, and certainly not exist in antagonism with other countries, but we must find a way to guarantee the security of all countries. And you wound up in Washington, D.C. last year under the sponsorship of Congressman Jim McGovern.
Yes. Our congressman in the 3rd District, where Leverett, our pagoda, resides, has been an ally of us, for the past maybe almost 8 years. Each time we come to Washington, he receives us in the House Office building. This year it will be in the Rayburn House Office building, but he holds a reception for us and gives us an opportunity to bring these issues to the larger community, to representatives from other states, to representatives who have a direct impact on the issues that we're bringing. And so, as you say, last year we walked for shared security. This was an idea first. Well, shared security is a universal idea, but the American Friends Service Committee had a conference in which they talked about this idea of shared security, and they put together a booklet, and we wanted to promote this idea that if a community or people are not secure, then other communities are not going to be secure, because they're going to be also finding or looking for resources that we may have. And so it's in the sharing of all these resources, it's in making sure everyone is secure that we can be secure. And it was successful in the sense that we were able to meet a lot of people and to introduce this idea.
Yeah, I think you're like bees. You go around and you collect the pollen and put it together and produce some honey. This year, the honey will be shared in April. When is Congressman McGovern hosting the gathering?
On April 5th, we will be in Washington, D.C. To share this with as many congressional leaders and their staff as we can. But before going to Washington, we will be in Boston. This idea of the Safe Communities Act, or sanctuary for the state of Massachusetts, is what our theme this year. And so we've been walking throughout Massachusetts since March 12th. We had a couple of days there, the 14th and 15th, where we were snowed out. We literally had to stop and wait for the storm to be over and the roads to be plowed to give us safe passage before we could resume. But we've been walking throughout much of Massachusetts, the Berkshires, the northern portion of our state, Greenfield and Winchington and Fitchburg, down to Worcester. We went to the southern part of our state, Attleboro and Fairhaven and Plymouth, and now we're in the North Shore area. And on Thursday, 2 days from now, we will end our Massachusetts portion of the walk on the steps of the State House.
What time is that?
That's at 12 noon. We're going to join people who we've met all along the way and to present petitions that we have had signed along the way, because we wanted to show these legislators who have not co-sponsored this bill yet that people are interested in this, that this is an important issue for our state, and that hopefully they can, understand that and get on board.
Wonderful. Will you be visiting, and the people gathering, will they be visiting in various State House offices?
We hoped there will be a couple of, we're still working out the details, but our state representative, I think Stan Rosenberg, is going to host us, and we're asking him to host us, and the governor, Governor Charlie Baker, we're hoping to meet with one of his staffers in the Constituent Services Office to share these, not so much the names, but the numbers of people who have signed these petitions.
Just want to be clear about a sanctuary. So Safe Communities would like to see Massachusetts be a sanctuary state. And just as Lawrence is technically a sanctuary city, we're a sanctuary city because President Trump et al. Want to punish us for, at a minimum, to be a sanctuary city or community means that we believe that the police do not have the duty to cooperate with immigration authorities. They do if there is a judge's order, then makes it constitutional, and then we know in the city that our police chief, wonderful Chief James Fitzpatrick, will certainly respond to a legal order. But without that, the police don't go out of their way to basically arrest, detain, persecute people who don't have papers. And if they did, if people without papers were being, keep saying persecuted, under threat of deportation, they would be less likely to, for instance, report a crime. If there was domestic abuse in their family, if they noticed it somewhere else, or if they were at the scene of an accident, they'd be less likely to report it. And so we'd like to have a community of trust. I just want to say one more thing. How did we get to this situation where we have 11 million undocumented people? And I think we could agree that these 11 million people aren't just Anne Frank hiding out in an attic. These are people who are living right out here in the open in our community and helping this country to flourish. They don't steal our jobs. They do the jobs that the great majority of Americans wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. And were they overnight, as the president talks about, taken away, the economy would suffer a severe blow. And in fact, we're going to highlight that on May 1st with a national strike to demonstrate the reality and the presence of these 11 million neighbors. So the Safe Community Bill is being sponsored by Senator
James Eldridge, yes, of I think he's in the area around Acton and Marlboro. And
Our own Juana Matias.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
as representative.
Yes. So this is, what you stated is very true and very important. And, many of those 11 million undocumented neighbors of ours, are here because of policies that our country has initiated in many parts of the world. As you think of El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala, these are, they're here because of our wars and our resource hunting, and so for them to have to, run from the sanctuary of their own home, seeking sanctuary in our country, a better way to support their families, and then to live in fear that they're going to be chased on, it just felt like, this is something that we as citizens has to fix. We can't wait for our political leaders to initiate these changes.
Central America is really stricken now. It's been reported that El Salvador is the Syria of Central America, and El Salvador, Honduras, et cetera, are very unsafe places for people to be. If you speak out against the dictatorial regimes, you can lose your life. So it's a double whammy. People are fleeing from these countries, and they come to the United States, and we have yet to have we've had George Bush, we've had President Obama, we've had 16 years without really a comprehensive and clear pathway to citizenship. So there's the double whammy that you're running from someplace, but you can't really settle down in peace.
That's true. That old saying, from the frying pan into the fire almost, yes.
So it will go a long way if Massachusetts, rather than each community, 354 communities, of which I think maybe a dozen are now sanctuary cities, if it would go a long way if we had this bill. What are the likelihood of its passing?
I think that, this political climate, it makes it more likely to pass than not. I think that, there are other states who are also considering becoming sanctuary states, and it would be great if Massachusetts could do this, because it would help to, spur other states to commit to this kind of, environment. So I'm hopeful that Massachusetts can pass this legislation.
Last night you met at North Parish Unitarian Universalists at a meeting that was sponsored by the Merrimack Valley People for Peace, and Brian Quirk, the president, had you speak, and also John Schuchard of the House of Peace spoke, and it seemed that things are pretty grim. The threats of deporting, 3 million people, in the first 100 days or whatever, or building the wall and so on and so forth. And yet there was a theme that came out that in the darkest times is when the light shines the brightest, and John Schuchard had high hopes for higher hopes for the resistance that seems to be springing up. Do you see that? You've been to many, you've been involved in the peace movement. Do you see that more people are activated now and engaged?
I do. One of the recurring themes is that maybe Trump has done more good for the peace movement than past presidents, because I think people are, I know for our walk, more people are joining, more people come to our evening gatherings. they're looking for hope, because things seem a bit grim. People are looking everywhere for signs of hope that we can overcome this time, and so people are becoming more active rather than just sitting and waiting for someone else to do it.
And you are the organizer, or one of the organizers of the Walk for a New Spring. And if anybody wants to walk in the remaining days before you go to Washington, they can go onto the internet and join you. And if they see you anywhere, there's I don't know if you're going to the climate event that Bill McKibben is involved in Washington, but there certainly will be peace walkers there.
Yes.
How many peace pagodas are there in the United States?
There are 2 peace pagodas completed and 2 on the one almost completed in the Smoky Mountains of eastern Tennessee, and one to be started in Frederick, Maryland. So we have almost 4 peace pagodas, but there are several temples and dojos around the country, from the West Coast to the East Coast. And so we're growing, and all of us do walks from time to time. We have this winter walk, and then there's the walk to commemorate Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the dropping of the nuclear bombs, because abolishing nuclear weapons is a big part of our walks as well.
And you have a movement to Mayors for Peace that was initiated by the mayor of Hiroshima.
Yes, the mayors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki created this organization called Mayors for Peace, and around the world, mayors have been joining. I'm not sure of the numbers, but a few years ago, there was more than 400 mayors from different places around the world who were involved, and the U.S. Council of Mayors has endorsed it year after year, this organization to promote the idea that cities should not be targets, for these nuclear weapons. You shouldn't target my city, and I shouldn't be targeting your city.
I'm with you there, my brother.
Yes.
And I want to encourage anybody to go to a peace pagoda or a temple. If you see it, hear of one in your neighborhood, certainly to visit the one in Leverett. And if you see the peace monks anywhere, walking, please join them. And you'll be in Salem tomorrow at 11?
We'll probably reach Salem in the mid-afternoon.
Okay.
Yes.
You'll be at the House of Peace when?
The House of Peace tonight.
Okay.
This evening,
Well,
yes.
we won't have that up by then. But I want to thank you, Tim Bullock, for organizing the walk, for inspiring me just by your presence, by your unwillingness to give up in the face of great odds. And so Tim Bullock, peace walker from the Peace Pagoda in Leverett, a member of the Nipponzan Myoji community, which is a Buddhist sect with a universal appeal. And maybe we could just close with a little more chanting. If you hear this chanting, feel free to come up to them, talk to them, share.
Please do.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Thank you again, Tim, for coming, and all love to Reverend Cato and Sister Claire and Brother Toby and the other walkers. And from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ralph, for having us here.
This has been